Hi guys, welcome back to the Pixapro channel. My name's Bradbury, a portrait and commercial photographer based in Stockport. And in this video today, we're going to be looking at two modes on the Storm 3600. That's the mains powered studio flash. We're going to be looking at keeping within normal camera sync, so that's say around 200th of a second. Your camera may vary. And we're going to use high speed sync to see, is that an option for freezing action in the studio? And today we have the lovely Lynne with us. Thank you very much, Lynne, for coming in. Okay, we've got a activewear outfit on at the moment. Lynne's going to do some jumping moves. I will not try and do that. I'll probably fail. And we'll see which images are sharper. Is it within normal sync, relying on the very short flash durations of the Storm 3600, or going into high-speed sync? Is that an option for us? Now, just so you're aware of what we're working with today, I'll be shooting on a very high-resolution camera, 50 megapixels, the Canon 5D SR. And we have a main light here, which is the 80 by 120 centimeter softbox flat pack from Pixapro, and a simple reflector and just a nice simple white background. So really we're looking at the sharpness of the image, so I didn't want any color play really in the background, so we just focused on the results that we're getting. So nice simple setup. Okay, so we're going to get to shooting now. I've had to move you guys a bit further into the corner, so I've got some room to shoot with. So we'll do the first one within my normal sync settings. So that's staying within my camera's sync speed. And for my cameras, I normally live about 160th of a second in the studio, 1/3 under. Now, generally speaking, for lights which have very good or very short flash durations, like the Storm 3600, you can get away at shooting at your max sync or closer to it. And what we're looking at when we look at the flash duration is the T.1 value, not the T.5. Reason is the T.1 flash value goes off a flash curve. The flash goes on, off very quickly with a very short trail at the end, 10% of the exposure. If you measure the flash duration off a T.5 value, it's on, off. There's your duration recorded, but you've still got about 40–50% of the exposure still going. Hence, you get motion blur. So we want that flash pulse to be on off very, very quick. So it freezes any kind of movement that's happening within the frame. So we'll work within normal sync first. Okay, and then we'll try high speed sync. Start you on the X. So we've got camera setting wise, I know you probably can't see me here. Hopefully you can still hear me. I've got ISO 100, f9, 160th of a second. The Storm 3600 is currently at quarter power plus 0.3, or quarter power and a third. And that's giving us, as far as I can remember, I said 1250th of a second. So quite a fast, or very short duration. And now think of the flash duration as your shutter speed. Imagine if you're shooting available light, you're shooting football sports, motor racing, you're going to want to start shooting 1,000th upwards of a second. So that's what we want. So if I just take a quick test shot here, and there we go, quick test shot of Lynne, looking cool in the outfit. There we go, okay. You can see we have good exposure there in Lightroom. The previous image that you saw was a black frame because I want no ambient light mixing in. This is, in this scenario, the video lights. I don't want any studio, overhead available lights, or the video lights mixing in. So we'll see what we get. Ready? 1, 2, 3. There we go. Now we'll see what we got in Lightroom, see if my timing was on the ball. There we go. Way wonky frame, but if we have a look at the frame, we should see nice sharp hair strands. Okay, nice and sharp on the face, the hands as well. Okay, also the knee, and the fastest moving part tends to be either hair, the feet, or the hands in many situations, unless it's a big swing, say with an arm or a leg. So you tend to see laces and the feet blur a little bit, but that's all nice and sharp there, perfectly acceptable. I will sometimes shoot the lights on a slightly lower power just to get a little quicker or shorter flash duration, but that's doing well at 1250th of a second. It's nice and sharp. So what I'm going to do now is, I'll come back onto set, is we're going to change this up. We're going to do high speed sync. And just so we're aware what's happening when you go into high-speed sync, within normal sync speed on a camera, you have a curtain. You have your sensor. Imagine my t-shirt's a sensor, okay? So, first curtain opens, boom, boom, exposure, boom, flash, end exposure, second curtain comes up. Now, when you move into high-speed sync, going above your sync speed, what you end up with, first curtain opens, second curtain chases that first curtain, and you end up with a slit across the sensor, continually moving across. So you can't expose the whole sensor with one flash through that slit. It's blocking light, both curtains. So what the flash actually has to do is go pop, 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 very fast, much faster than that, by the way, to expose all of the sensor. And with that, multiple flash pops, ergo, we may see a little bit more motion blur, okay? Because it's pulse, 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 flash, 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 rather than flash once off. So let's take a look and see which comes out sharper. To change these settings, I have to make a change to ISO 200, and I need to shoot this at 5.6, and I'm going to go to 640th of a second. So I'm going to go to high speed sync on the trigger, 640th of a second, 5.6 ISO 200. I think that was correct. And the flash power needs to be half power and 6/10. So I'm going to take it up to half power and 6/10 there. And I'll change the flash to high speed sync mode up here. We have to do it manually on the head to tell it we're going into high speed sync. I'm going to dump the flash. There we go. So it's ready to go. So flash is now on high speed sync. Camera trigger is on high speed sync. I've gone beyond my 200th of a second limit, and I'm on 640th of a second. Say that 3 times fast. Right, okay, so we're gone above that sync speed. We're into high speed sync. Now, another use of high speed sync, I mean, for me, honestly, in a studio, I'm not going to use it. Now, there may be exceptions to that rule. Imagine if Lynne was doing a promotional video for a brand here. I needed to shoot some stills and portraits or what have you in between takes. They can't kill the video lights because they take a while to warm up and everything's happening on set, so I have to compromise and maybe shoot high speed sync then. Or I'm shooting with flash outdoors and I don't want to shoot at f11, f8, f16. I want to be able to crank my shutter speed, open up my aperture to compensate for a shallower depth of field. And that really is where I would go into using high speed sync versus in the studio. But let's see if it freezes. Action. All right, okay. So I did it. I managed it. Hey, 1, 2, 3. There are things you can do to mitigate motion blur. When you're shooting movement in the studio, you can wait to the peak of a jump, peak of a movement. And one thing that you may find, starting to see a little bit more motion blur now, a little bit on the face, a little bit on the hands. It's acceptably sharp. I mean, if you down-res this to web, you would be okay. Lower foot is showing it because the lower foot and leg is the jump, essentially. So we start to see a little bit more motion blur. Now, it will work up to a point, but what's happening is when you crank a flash in high-speed sync to, say, half power and where are we? 6/10, we're nearly half power 2/3, nearly at full power. You're asking a lot out of it as well, so you lose a lot of power. That's why I've had to go to ISO 200. I've had to open up to 5.6 from f9. So you compromise, not so much on image quality with ISO, cameras can handle it these days, but depth of field, certainly. And that's another reason why I wouldn't really go for this within the studio. I would still rather shoot within normal sync and have just the very, very short flash durations on whichever pack or head, in this case the Storm 3600 that I'm using, take care of that freezing the movement. Now, if my studio had big bay windows, sun streaming in, I didn't have any blinds, I might need to consider using high-speed sync more. I don't. I tend not to use high-speed sync a lot. So let's do one more high-speed sync. Okay, so a nice big, boom, energetic jump on this. So it could be fast limb movements.
Yeah, okay.
We'll do the same on the other.
Okay.
So it's more about the
sharp.
Yeah, short and sharp on you. 1, 2, 3. Can you see that motion blur in the hand there? Again, the head and face isn't moving that quickly in comparison to the arm being lifted. Okay, so we start to see motion blur. Now, could you get away with that on e-commerce? Absolutely. We can see it on the foot there as well. Yeah, sure. So we'll come out of high-speed sync on the trigger, go back down to quarter power plus a third. I'm going to go up to F9, down to ISO 100, and I am at 160th of a second. I'll just tell the flash that we are going out of high-speed sync. There we go. I'll have to dump the flash with these heads. There we go. Right, I'm all set. Yep. And 1, 2, 3. And we'll compare two of these, and that hand is much more sharp, much more frozen. As we look at Lightroom, the hair as well will be frozen, and also the shoelace there. Now it depends on at the point I click the shutter whether that's fallen flat or it's actually still moving, but that's nice and sharp there. Plus as well, I'm shooting at f9, so I've got plenty of depth of field. So if we compare these two in Lightroom, and we zoom in on both, just let them finish in rendering. Now you should be able to see, I don't know if you can actually see this, Lynn, the difference in colour. That's in normal sync, that's in high speed sync. So we've got a slightly warmer tone on the right, slight magenta shift, and it's a little cooler, shifting a little bit more towards green on the left. Okay. So the colour shift in the likes of high speed sync is true of any light that you do this with. You go into any kind of high speed mode in a flash, you usually expect a bit of a colour shift. And so there's trade-offs. Could you use this? Yeah, sure. It'll get something done. I mean, that, if you can colour correct it for, say, a small Etsy site or something, or maybe you've just started the clothing brand, on the web you could get away with that. For me, I would rather shoot within normal sync. What I want you guys to do is, if you've got some kit yourself, you can do this with other lights like the City 600s, the Pikas. Try this as a test yourself. Try freezing action. Just see where the flash duration is short enough to do so. I tend to recommend higher powered flashes for stopping action, because you can run them at a lower power to get an equivalent FA f-stop, for example, and get a shorter flash duration. So there's advantages there as well, but see what your lights will do. Post in the comments below, do you use high speed sync in a studio or indoor setting, or do you tend to stick to using it outside with available lights? It absolutely has its uses, but for me, freezing action, I mean, I want to be within normal sync, relying on the good T.1 short flash durations of the Storm 3600s or the other lights in the range as well. Any comments or questions, drop them below. Thank you very much for watching, and thank you very much for Lynn as well.
Thank you very
for coming
much.
along. Okay, and we'll see you in the next video.